from the Black Swan Media Studios, deep inside a secret underground bunker. We're speaking to freedom-loving patriots from all around the country and the world. Welcome to the Resistance. This is John Crump, live.
And we are live. How are you guys doing? I just want to say everyone subscribe to the Safety Doc. That's a guy we're having on today. Yeah, you can go to safetyphd.com as well. We are brought to you by JFD Supply. JFD Supply has everything you need to build a firearm. Whether you're looking for a P80 kit, one of their SIG P320 kits, Patmo slide, whatever you need, they have. And they have some incredible deals going on. You can use code CRUMP and get money off. I do have an affiliate link, which I don't really give out, so whatever. But code CRUMP will get you $10 off and free shipping. Can you believe that? Free shipping. I mean, that's amazing. We are also sponsored by Tusk. Tusk is a cryptocurrency focused on the firearms market. Tusk is the one I support because it's not a pump and dump. It's not a rug pull or anything like that. Recently, I did have someone pitch a cryptocurrency, and they offered me quite a substantial amount of money to publish it. And I said, hell no, because there's a lot of rug pulls. Rug pulls is when the cryptos, they pump them up and all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. So I will not get involved in any of that stuff. But Tusk, I will.
Proudly sponsored by TUSC, the only cryptocurrency designed with the firearms market in mind, with 3-second processing times. It's the fastest cryptocurrency on the planet. With lower transaction fees than traditional credit cards. It's perfect for your e-commerce needs. For gun guys, by gun guys. Visit TUSC.network for more information and join the digital revolution.
Cool, right? Tusk. Well, we are also sponsored by Black Swan Tactical, where you cannot get this shirt because this is some Tier 1 Kinetics. Check them out, Tier 1 Kinetics. But you can get some patches. Awesome patch like that. The Flying Rich patch. Yes, you can get that. One lucky guy who buys a patch today will get the GOA patch. How about that? That's pretty cool, right? So go to blackswantactical.com, and Rich is distracting me behind the scenes, so stop it, Rich.
Black Swan Tactical, your #1 source for 2A streetwear. With shirts, mugs, hats, patches, flags, and more. There's always something to help you rep the 2A community. All proceeds go back into our projects. Viewers and listeners can take an additional 10% off with code CRUMPY. Unapologetically pro-gun, pro-liberty, and pro-freedom gear for the front lines of the culture war.
And look, it's Flying Rich himself.
I got to unmute myself, huh?
Yes, you got to unmute yourself. Okay. By the way, you can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/John Crump. We just got a couple new Patreons today. Isn't that awesome? All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and ask Rich. How you doing? How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing good. I enjoyed the nice long weekend. If you looked at my live stream, you saw my Thanksgiving Day disaster commentary, and otherwise things are good.
All right, and we're joined by the Safety Doc himself.
Hey, gentlemen. So John and Rich, thank you so much for inviting me on John Crump Live. So I am excited to be here. Been looking forward to this all day, and a big fan of your channel, and of course, see you guys over in different channels, including our friend DLD. So thank you for inviting me on.
Dark has been calling me. He wants to come over and pick something up, but I guess he can't remember when the freaking show's on.
That guy never sleeps.
I always get a kick out of Dark.
Yeah, I've known his brother since before he was born.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's I've known his family forever. But yeah, by the way, are you into 3D printing?
I am not. So I don't 3D print, although I know quite a bit about 3D printing because I teach a legal course for school administrators, and that's one area we cover.
Okay, and
is 3D printing.
The reason why I'm saying I usually don't talk about deals or anything like that, but there is an awesome deal at Micro Center, and not sponsored by Micro Center or anything, but they have the Ender 3, which is usually $299. They have it for $199, right? But if you sign up for their mailing list, they'll give you another $100 off. So you can walk out with the Ender 3 for $99.
Wow.
Which is an insane price.
If there was a Micro Center in my state, I would have got one.
Yeah, I mean, that's an insane price. I almost drove over there and got a new one. I told Dark about it, and I think he was going to go try to get one.
Dang.
Because that's an insane price.
Yeah, that's hell of a price. And that's a 3D printer. After 3 hours, you're going to have great prints. I'm trying, where's my sample print?
Yeah.
I don't have the sample printer in. But actually, my daughter bought the stupid Apple AirTags, which, Apple, I'm going to bleep out the bad words I think about Apple. So it's going to take, the show is going to be longer. But they sell you the stupid AirTag, and they don't even put a key ring on it. So you got to buy the AirTag for like $30 and then spend another $35 on some leather key fob. Well, I 3D printed this, and so the AirTag fits in here, and it's got a clip.
Yeah, well,
man, that's awesome.
Well, there you go. Also tomorrow,
or you can print Pez dispensers.
Yeah, well, we'll get into your stuff, Safety Doc. Don't worry. Also tomorrow, we have Tim Mack on. Tim Mack wrote a book called Misfire about the NRA, which is a New York Times bestseller, and he's an investigative journalist. We're not going to be talking about are you pro-gun or anti-gun, because his book is so balanced that it's amazing that it's that balanced. Like, I don't know if he's pro-gun or anti-gun or anything like that, because it's just balanced. And he talks a lot about the NRA, and I'm very, very excited to get to talk to him. But I'm very excited to talk to you. How do you want to be referred to? I can refer to you as Safety Doc, or
sure, you can just do that, Safety Doc.
All right, Safety Doc, tell everyone what you do.
Okay. So what does the Safety Doc do? I am a retired school administrator after 25 years, and I consult with school districts and organizations and companies on school safety and also community safety. So I'm also the author of the book School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America. And this was released in 2019. It's the most honest book about the $3 billion school safety industry. Really broke it down. I was saying, hey, here's what's going on with the billions of dollars being spent on school safety. And a lot of it is going toward devices and mechanisms and programs which aren't increasing safety in schools. So it was really a counterpunch to the narrative, but it needed to be written. It's extremely solid with that. I presented on PBS twice about school safety, once in 2013 and again in 2019. So when I present also, and I teach university courses for aspiring superintendents, one of the things that I find, John and Rich, is that people, when you think about school safety and you say, what does school safety mean to you? One of the first statements is, well, it's gun safety. Well, it's gun prevention. Well, it's, and it's like, okay, that's the narrative, right? Everybody has been brought into that. So when you read School of Errors, for example, you're not going to find that narrative. And kind of, John, as we're saying with your guest tomorrow, when I presented on PBS, I mean, that wasn't the narrative. I was breaking down into threat reporting systems, right? The whole mental health, the issue of deep fakes in schools. And I had two of my students this fall. We were doing tabletop exercises, and they're new superintendents. And in November, in this month, one of them in their school district had a radon exposure. So their radon detectors went off and they had to evacuate the school. And another one had, it was called like an epoxy smell, and they had to have 20 plus staff and students taken out by ambulance and stuff. But see, these are the things like people don't talk about. You don't think about this when you're thinking school safety. And that's where, I broaden really the discussion out into school safety and pull it back because the entire world is trying to compact that into gun safety.
Actually, I'm trying to pull it up here. Let's see if I can get to the. Trying to get to the front. I've been reading your book, so like I'm scrolling through back to the beginning, so I can show that. Here it is.
Hey, look at that! That's awesome.
Yeah. So, sorry, I was trying to scroll back. I've been scrolling since you've been on, trying to get back to the front cover.
And I have a new book coming out too. It's called The Velocity of Information. Releases April 15th, and that is about how humans function in chaos, in short-term chaos and chaos that lasts for months or even into years. And that has 10 in-depth interviews that I did, including Larry Lawton, America's biggest jewel thief. So I asked him, hey, how'd you find out about 9/11, right? A guy who spent 4 years in the hole. So yeah, that's coming out. But I think, to sum up kind of what I do is I help schools, largely schools and communities, identify their threat reporting systems. Like if you have a threat, how does it get inputted into your system? Is it, we'll tell an adult? Is it some complex app that no one has ever used before? And, a kid's supposed to interface with it. And then sitting down with these kids in schools and saying, so who has discretion here to make decisions? That's another thing. One question I'll ask is, teachers, so could you pull the fire alarm if you noticed smoke coming from a door down the hall or something? Could you pull the fire alarm? And 83% of the time, over hundreds of teachers, maybe thousands, 83% of the time, they say, I'd have to find somebody to give me permission, like a principal or something. So
holy cow.
Yeah, it's 83, Rich. Yeah, it's 83%. And I have a friend who's a safety expert out on the West Coast, and he does the same thing that I do, where he'll individually go and he'll ask people, teachers, when he comes into districts, these questions, teachers and staff, and even students, like high school students, they'd be like, I don't know, like I'd have to find somebody. And it's the same thing, guys. It's like, who has permission to use the AED and take it out of the case? Who has permission to use the fire extinguisher? So, there's a lot of these questions which nobody's asked, but when you ask them, you get really kind of like his eye-opening, whoa, answers. Like you'd think anybody would do that. They would feel they could pull a fire alarm. In most cases, they'd be like, no, I'd search for, until I don't want to get in trouble. So there's all these aspects of safety, right, that nobody thinks about. And that's where I try to bring that into the discussion.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
It is.
It is. The whole school safety thing is something that's amazing. My kid goes to a private school, and they have all these safety protocols, and they know, pull the fire alarms of a fire and all this stuff. And their school safety is like really, really good.
Awesome.
But if you go to the private school, the public school, which some of my friends' kids are in, it's freaking terrible. And I think it's just that my kids' private school, they invested a lot of money. They brought in consultants. They figured out, the best ways to protect the kids and stuff like that. And I don't think a lot of public schools do that.
No, John, you're right. What happens is they end up having vendors, because vendors pose as experts, right? And vendors come in and say, we'll sell you this high definition camera system. Or in my district, and I have a picture of it in my book, they sold the district bollards and said, put in these yellow bollards in front of all of the doors of your building so no one can crash in with a car. So
because that happens so frequently.
right, Rich, because this happens all the time, right? And so I'm reading this, and then I go past the schools, and they're drilling the holes in the sidewalks and stuff to put these in. And I took pictures, right? And put one in the book. And I asked the superintendent, I said, so how did you determine this was the best way to spend your money? And basically it was, vendors, and it's customer perceived value. People can see this. And I said, how about your two-way radios, right? How about being able to talk from the playground into the office if a kid, falls and breaks an arm or something? Well, they're like, yeah, it's not good, right? How about between buildings? Like at night, people between buildings, or custodial staff between buildings are like, nope, never tested it. So my God, obviously that's where your, money should have gone instead of these bollards. So
Yeah.
I'm in Wisconsin. These things now, they're 2 years old. They're starting to rust around the bottom when it gets snowy outside. You can't ever shovel
So-
around these things. It's impossible. And they look ugly, they faded, they're useless, they create an obstacle as you come in and out. So just all of these things, just a waste. And John,
well, then you sell them Bollards 2.0. I mean,
Well,
where do
like
I sign up for a job with that company?
the consultants my kids' private
Yeah.
school brought in, they weren't vendors. They didn't sell anything. They made a plan and said, here, this is what, they have two-way radio. Every teacher has a two-way radio and everything
Nice.
like that. But they didn't go out and get somebody to sell them stuff.
Right.
Like I refer to it as kind of like in the you have fiduciaries, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Where
it's a
you
good way.
pay them fees and they're not trying to sell you anything.
Right.
Yeah, that's really a great way to put it. And even in our state, so I'm in Wisconsin, and the state set aside money 3 years ago, and basically a catalog of school safety equipment that districts could order for free out of this grant. And one of the districts ordered new locks for their doors, and it was this really bizarre lock mechanism. And so it was 100-year-old school. They retrofit it with these like double locks. There's a lock on the top, and you got to press a button, and there's a lock at the bottom. And these things failed. So like in the first 3 weeks of school, a teacher had to kick out the bottom of a door to get in to, get through this. Another time, I mean, it was several hours of trying to get one of these doors open. And then, so I was talking to the superintendent. I'm like, so what do you do now? You've just gotten rid of all your old locks, the state. So they contacted the state. The state's like, not our problem. So eventually I got involved in that and was able to get a hold of the vendor and said, you got to help these people out. I mean, and the vendor said, yeah, just go in and shake it a little bit, or a little bit of talcum powder, or a little WD-40. And I said, we'll take this to the news. I mean, this is ridiculous. You just sold them garbage, and you didn't make it you made it more dangerous. You're not standing by your product in the state. So yeah, right. As you said, John, likely what happened in that setting you're talking about, the private school setting, is whoever came in thought, let me analyze what's existing here, and let's look at what we can couple with this to make it a more effective safety system for for the staff and the kids. And so that's really great. Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen very much.
Well, I'll tell you what disturbs me the most. And first, I want to get a question out here. John, is this our first guest that's wearing a suit jacket?
No,
Because culture, it's a little startling for me. Not that I have
we
jacket at work.
we had somebody wearing a suit and tie one time. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah. All right, so
We're really laid back here, man.
he's not the first. I forgot who it was, who the economist was that said it, but there's three ways to spend money. And
before you say anything,
yeah,
I want to go on that suit thing. Rich and I come from the tech world, right? And in the tech world, the CEOs don't wear suit jackets.
right.
It's like everyone's in t-shirts and everything else.
But I did work at the Mayo Clinic, and they were like mad at you if you didn't wear a vest with your suit, even though you're in the back office and nobody saw you.
Wow. I'd love to have a vest. I don't own a vest. So, yeah.
When I was working for my previous company and we met with the CEO of that previous company, the one that starts with an F, it might have a B in there. It might be called Meta now, but like he was even in a freaking hoodie. Yeah. So, and like all, and like, and the CEO of the company was wearing she was wearing a t-shirt. So I mean that's the world I come from.
And this really goes with my just kind of the safety doc when I do shows or I'm on shows. But yeah, typically it's not my everyday. It's my.
I didn't know if you just walk around. It's like Saturday morning. You get up, put the suit jacket on.
I'll tell you though, you could, because these things are like $20 now on eBay because nobody goes to the office.
I didn't think about that.
Go, Oscar De La Renta 44 rag, man, and for $100 I can set myself up for 5 years worth of sport coats. So,
yeah. I got half a closet I don't use anymore.
So it is kind of fun in that regard because if anything happens to it, I'm not worried But yeah, there's no dry cleaners around anymore either. Like all in
that
our area,
too,
they're just all shut down. So like I have to drive a long way to.
I got one like 5 minutes away from me.
Man, John, that's gold. I used to, and then shut her down.
Yeah, it's just there are a lot of people in my neighborhood that wear suit jackets, I guess you can say.
But John lives in the bad part of his neighborhood.
Right.
I do. People think that's a joke when you say that, but that's true.
It's true.
But everything's relative, I guess.
So I wanted to hit on the locks. And so there's 3 ways to spend money. You spend your money on something for you. You spend somebody else's money on something for you, which is the second worst way. And the third worst way to spend money is you spend somebody else's money on somebody else.
Right.
And that's what you described.
Yes.
Is in the I forgot it. It's not Deming. Somebody, whoever the economist that Dan Bongino quotes all the time, said that. So
dude, what's up with you and Dan Bongino? Every episode, it's like Dan Bongino said this.
Dan's a neighbor.
Bongino said this.
Dan and Nancy Pelosi are neighbors. So, I'm just pimping people in my hood.
Oh, wow. Dude, Bastion has a cyber cell. Spend $100, get $20 off. Okay, sorry.
But the point is, the worst possible way to spend your money, or money being spent, is when the government spends it, like the school, like you just described, and they're buying, like, I got money in my budget. Let's pick through the catalog, and I'll buy these. And the problem with that is you don't care about the cost or the quality. In that case, it has no bearing on it. And I'm not going to name the organization I worked for, but I did work for a Manhattan organization. And at the end of the year, I had a budget. And if I didn't spend every last dime in that budget, I got less of a budget next year.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to, it didn't matter what it was. If I ordered a crate of red staplers, it didn't matter. I had to, it's like my director came in like, hey, you got to spend this money. I'm like, how much? It's like this. I'm like, all right, I'm on it.
Yeah. No, you're right. And in school safety, again, if it wasn't in the catalog, you could say, I want to spend money on, we're going to interview students and staff and families on what safety means to them, how they interact with our safety systems, stuff like that. Like none of that would be approved, right? It had to be in the catalog. So even things like that are sensical, or bring in observers to watch us do exercises and make recommendations. Maybe John, what's happening, at the private school you're talking about. So those things weren't even options. Somebody approached me from one of the districts and said, yeah, I have a few things I'd like to do kind of like that made a lot of sense. So I helped them write this proposal, and it just, again, the DOJ is like, nope, not in the catalog. So here, it's got to be this,
And so I think you talk about the school catalog, and you think that, well, the school did research on them, and these are best of breed products, and therefore,
right. No, right. So that's what and in 2019, when I was on PBS, I said that doesn't happen at all, right? It is there is no underwriter's laboratory, there is no research, there's really no liability for companies who sell these things. And the hope for the company is it'll never be tested, right? Because these are very low incidence things, like those bollers, right? So like it's unlikely anybody will collide into them. So they sell things without any research. They don't have any way to assess what your current systems are and say, no, that's really not your priority. Your priority is two-way radios or something else.
So I take it, and just for my point of view, and I'm sure John feels the same way, is if I say, hey, these are the best magazines ever, buy these mags, they're the worst, don't buy them. If I'm pimping something on the show, I'm not going to say, hey, this flashlight it isn't. This is not a good flashlight. Somebody sent it to me for free. I will not promote it. And I would expect if there was a Black Swan Media catalog of like podcasting equipment, microphones and lights and stuff like that, that John would have used it. He would have said it was good stuff, and this is what you should buy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What value?
Like ever.
And the other part to go with that, right, would be if you did discover something that had a defect in it. Some people start contacting you and say, hey, this particular product, we're having some issues. Then you would look and say, okay, like where did we sell this to? Which districts bought these locks? But that didn't happen either.
Yeah.
Guys. So that's
So you track the product. It's like, hey, these guys bought the stuff.
Right. There has to be some type of either we're going to switch it out or something, because that stuff happens. That's typical. I mean, but the fact of just saying nope, we'll handle it in this one case because you made a ruckus about it, but we're not going to notify these other places. And so it is, it's a weird world to function in. And one of the things too is I work in tabletop exercises, so getting people to make decisions when they're stressed. And it can be, like, hey, there was a bus accident or something, or there is a blackout. So like, what would you do? And I'll tell you, it's getting people are just hesitant, people in leadership, to make decisions. So that's really the barrier coming into this is you need to make a decision. You need to inventory your options and make a decision. And if it doesn't move you forward, then inventory your options again and make another decision. I mean, but people are so decision averse, I would say, which is it's probably part of society too. I mean, I don't see people as kind of a go-getters and wanting to lead as much. They're kind of in the delta wing, right? Waiting for somebody else to take the lead, which you can't do in safety, right? You got to make a decision.
Or the Omicron ring.
Yeah.
Wing. I see DLD out there. Thank you, DLD, for bringing me this awesome guest. And yes, we do have to get him up to.
How many subs are you at now?
I think I'm at 738 coming into today.
Oh, wow.
So I'm up 270 subs, or 40% in the last month.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, hoping to get above 1,000, and especially before the book launch on April 15th. So I have a podcast tonight, actually. So I do Monday nights and Friday mornings for my show.
And that's on your YouTube channel?
Yes, on my YouTube channel. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that is awesome. I really enjoy your podcast.
Hey, thanks.
And I usually don't listen to that many podcasts.
I had somebody contact me a few weeks ago and said, hey, I listened to all 159 episodes of your show so far. I'm like, it's like 300 hours worth of listening. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. I mean, they work in school safety in a district in Florida. Oh. And that's their job. So, they were pulling stuff from this. I always do a blog post, and then they said, hey, I've got a few questions on some stuff. Can I contact you? I'm like, sure.
Oh, fantastic.
Glad to help you out. But yeah, someone I've had people who have listened, who've taken my PBS presentation, and then they've outlined it, and then they like build in resources like that link to it. And it was all positive, right? And then they email me this and say, hey, like this might help you when you're presenting. I'm like, oh my God, like this is like 20 hours worth of work here. I don't even know you. We should send you like a gift or something.
Right.
This Pete Venkman should be coming your way or something like that. I mean,
right. What was that you had there?
It wasn't a Funko Pop, John.
Ghostbusters, yeah, right there.
I know. I just saw the new Ghostbusters today. I introduced my my 8-year-old to the Ghostbusters movies this weekend, and then today we went. You
told him the third one didn't exist.
Right.
No, the remake. I just skipped that one totally.
Right.
We didn't watch the remake, and then I took him to see Ghostbusters Afterlife today, which I haven't. I don't know if you saw it or not.
I haven't. So should I?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Because I saw the 84, the original Ghostbusters in the theater. So yeah.
Yeah, this is a proper sequel.
Nice.
Which it's not a remake; it's a freaking sequel, which is awesome.
Yeah. I love it. I'll see it. So yeah.
Even though the Ghostbusters look old as hell. But most of the story's not about them. But yeah, it's a good movie. My son liked it. I liked it.
Cool. Yeah, we have a theater in our town, which is nice. I don't live in a very big town, but it's a very nice theater, like reclining, seats and stuff like that. So yeah.
John has a theater like that in his basement.
Man, you are fortunate, buddy. Yeah, this is.
Rich, stop telling everyone.
This is the best as it gets down here in the unheated North Star recording studio, and it's winter in Wisconsin, so it's about 63 down here right now.
Like I've always wanted to have a theater in my house.
I think
You
it's
know,
awesome.
like a proper theater with like stadium seating, 130-inch screen, surround sound, and everything. And a few years ago, my wife built me one,
That is
my
awesome.
private theater.
God, I
So
love it.
Rich likes it.
When I was in college, one of my friends who graduated a couple years before, like, bought a house in the university, same town. So, and he had a shed out back, and he had it basically made in. I mean, this is in the '90s. He had it made into this surround sound type studio, and it was just amazing. We watched the movie Twister, and like the whole shed was vibrating,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
just, I mean, you'd be like, you almost had to go and get outside just to like ground yourself. Like, holy smokes, like it was so realistic. Yeah, and he ran a cable from the shed underneath into his house, and then he had all of his DVDs. Like he could program everything from outside. It's just amazing. He was an electrician, by the way, so like this stuff was just second nature for him. But oh god, so yeah, oh man, that sounds great.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Next Belt, everyone, they have a deal. I wear Next Belts. I don't know if you are familiar with Next Belts or not,
I'm not.
but they're freaking awesome belts, and I wear them, and I'm now have affiliate links from them, because I really like their crap. I don't know, Rich, you know Next Belts at all?
Yeah, sure.
They're freaking great.
I'm waiting for my free one from you.
Well, we're gonna have the dude on, but yeah, they're just great belts, especially if you carry.
So you guys ever heard of Mernickel holsters out of
No, I haven't.
Texas? So that's where I have my belt. So it's a yeah, I mean a thick wall leather that you can holster anything on without it turning over. So Mernickel, and I've bought belts like for 15 years from them. But it's this family run organization or business. So they make really cool stuff. Anything you want. Like I sent them like, here's where I want the holes on it. Here's where I want this and this, and they're like, got it. So
Yeah, it's just I mean, when you carry belts are, it can be stupid to get a belt that really works good.
right.
Unfortunately, they actually have like a really good belt, and I've been using them for years, and they reached out and said, "Hey, we want to come in your podcast." I'm like, "We have this belt system. We'll send you a belt." I'm like, "I got like 15 in my closet." Like, yeah, you can send me extra ones, but it's the only belt that I use.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so I'm gonna have them on my podcast just to talk about their belts, just because it's something that I actually do use.
I love a good belt. I mean, yeah,
I don't know.
I'm kind of a belt connoisseur. Yeah.
I just got a notification of their Cyber Monday sale. It's like up to 30% off, which was crazy because I don't need any more belts. But yeah, it looks like I'm gonna be buying myself some new belts. It's like one of those things. Yeah, I don't know. But getting back to you, sorry. Cyber Mondays, I can't believe you.
We totally sidetracked them.
Yeah, I'm like ADHD, so I see something, like something shiny over there. I'm like,
Got to get horse blinders on you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. There's just a lot of good deals out there. I know, like Silencer Co. had a buy one get one free suppressor. So yeah, more tax stamps.
That just means, yeah, I was gonna say, it means you double the tax stamps.
Yeah, well, my lawyer spent $7,000 on gun stuff.
Wow.
Talk about a baller.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, buy one get one free." Okay. Oh, there's no limit. You can buy multiple suppressors to get multiple ones. Whatever. Then he bought one from something else. Then he saw another deal for another suppressor. He's like, "Oh, I just bought a suppressor. Should I cancel my order?" No, I'm just gonna get another one. I'm like, all right, whatever, you do, you man.
So guys, I've got an interesting take on kind of the FBI and schools if you want to
Yeah, let's get into it.
go down that road a little bit. So um so on October 4th, all right, so I've got three screens in front of me. So if you guys are looking over, you're like, hey, is Dave checking out the Cyber Monday deals? No, I am actually over here just looking at my podcast I did on this. But on October 4th, 2021, Attorney General Merrick Garland sent a memo to the director of the FBI, and he told the director of the FBI in this memo, and I have it linked out on my site, safetyphd.com. And it's easy to find this memo. But anyway, sent this one-page memo telling the FBI, hey, get the federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial leaders together, and in the next 30 days, figure out strategies for addressing threats against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff.
Yep.
And then also how to gather evidence. So that came out on October 4th. So it's been 30 days, right? So I talked about this with my superintendents. Again, I teach the legal class, the graduate legal class. And first of all, I said, do you know that this memo has been issued? Have any of your organizations told you this, like your state organizations, you're part of your superintendent groups and stuff like that? They're like, nope, no one said anything about this. I'm like, well, all right. So here's that's not uncommon, guys, that, their organizations don't help them out. You were talking too about kind of vendors and stuff, I think, John. And so there was an article that I brought up when I talked on PBS, and it was done by the articles by the 74 million. So if anybody does a search for it, it was like superintendents and paying for endorsements. And the articles basically said, yeah, a lot of these organizations, that schools are aligned with or pay memberships to, you can pay them $15,000 and they'll basically put your device. They don't say they maybe endorse it, but really they do, right? So it's a pay to play type of thing. But so that does exist, and these things are very, very real. But so anyway, October 4th, the Attorney General sends this memo to the FBI. Says, hey, school board meetings are becoming too out of control, so we need ways for schools to make these, I guess, more civil. And the second is how they can collect data in evidence on people who are attending meetings. And so nothing has come out from this yet, but it wasn't dropped. It's still out there. And if you start to read some of the headlines, parents, FBI are appearing at certain school board meetings. Parents are finding out that they're being investigated because they've presented at a meeting against a mask mandate or something like that.
Yeah, it's Loudoun County.
So that's an example right there.
That's where I live at.
Okay. So that's one example. And I start to see these and I'm like, so when is the other shoe going to drop on this? And also if you're being investigated, so the school district would make this report, I guess, to the FBI that a parent has made what they perceive to be a threatening statement. Now, when they listed out what some of the threatening statements were, they were things like, okay, be like, hey, Rich and John, like you guys are on the school board and here I'm presenting and I don't agree with, your decisions and I'm going to get you guys out of those seats. So if I say that, right, both of you are like, okay, we could take Dave, like wouldn't be any problem. But no, you're thinking, well, wait a second. He just said, he's going to get us out of those seats. That's a threatening statement. So we're going to report that. And suddenly I'm the recipient of an FBI investigation. And this isn't hyperbole, by the way.
And this is happening.
It is happening. And but maybe what I meant is, hey, I'm going to run for election or else I'm going to be campaigning for whoever's out there running against you guys. And we're going to properly, right through the democratic school board voting process, put other people in and remove you through that voting process. So it is completely subjective. And these districts and these superintendents aren't getting any guidance on this, or if they do get guidance from the legal counsel, their attorneys tell them, gather evidence on your participants in school board meetings. So another thing I told my class, I said, it will be very soon, you'll receive directives from some of your legal counsels to record everybody at a school board meeting, not that the school board members are recorded, that the audience is recorded. Like, you're going to be asked to do that. That will be evidence, right? Because if, I'm reading through this very carefully, and I've worked with lawyers, I've been an expert witness, and I'm like, this is a blueprint to collect evidence, and you can collect evidence on anybody. And, it is really scary. Like, where does this stop? And for school safety, it also has this really weird feel of kind of like this default to the feds. And, but yeah, it's one of those things that's not clearly communicated out to the superintendents, the school board associations. They're getting fuzzy statements on what to do with this. But but the FBI is starting to advance this, and so I never thought we'd see this. And something too, like if they say, in 30 days we're going to hold these hearing sessions, well, that's ridiculous, right? In a perfect situation, you couldn't go to tribal communities and states and whatever and hold these meetings in 30 days. So, so this is a big setup, and it's something that nobody is bringing attention to. And it's just kind of easing. It's becoming the norm of, hey, we're going to be gathering more information on people who present at in opposition to XYZ, whatever it is, or send a letter that might have I wouldn't say threatening, because obviously, if you're threatening somebody, that's overt, that's different, but kind of, opposing viewpoints of boards and stuff like that. And this is a mess, guys. I never thought I'd see this. I've done this, 25 years. I've taught classes for 20 years. And I told the students this fall, I'm like, I've never seen anything like this. And, you've got to know where you stand on this. And you've also, what do you do if the FBI comes knocking and is asking you for information on some of your parents? And obviously they're probably not going to do that. They'll just pull it up on their own. They have this information anyway. But I said, what's your message here? What if your school board association said to you, or your school board said, hey, like, we want to start recording everybody in the audience, and it's going to be evidence. Like, what do you think? Are you going to get behind that or not? And so again, like,
it's like Stasi.
It is
style.
This is very close to Stasi. And back in, so John, back in March of 2020, it was Bellevue, Washington. The police department put together a website. And so I captured the website, right? I'm taking screen captures, video, all this stuff. And they weren't the only one. Around me, Dane County, Wisconsin, where Madison is, and other places had these websites where if people had gatherings of 4 or more people, you could drag from a Google map the address in, and then you could take pictures and you could report that gathering, social gathering, had happened. It was in violation, right, of the social gathering of, 3 people or whatever. So this is also this has a very Stasi feel to it. And is it telling other parents to record parents who are presenting at meetings, or monitoring Facebook, right? If parents have a close Facebook group about what's going on at school, so you're right. Yeah. So the Stasi stuff, right, is, what was it, like East Germany, where it was like 1 in 3 people were basically enrolled by the government to spy on their neighbors and report their behaviors. And I think in China with the social credit score, you're required to report so many good things and bad things about, like, people to impact their social credit score. But yeah, to me, this has a complete Stasi feel. It is, it's really an overstep, because, and again, school boards at a local level and, at a state level, they were coming back to the Fed and saying, we don't need this. Like, most of our meetings turned out okay. We don't need this. So that's what they did, is, they were telling them, hey, just leave us alone to do this on our own. So
yeah, there was a lady in Colorado that got a visit from the FBI because she said something.
Was it Thanksgiving morning?
Yes.
It's never good. That's never good.
Yeah,
and they broke in her door.
I've seen, so I heard about that, and I've read, because I follow this, right? So I found enough of these that the concern is definitely there, right? And another thing too is I was going through this, if you're the recipient of an FBI investigation, so they're investigating, let's say anybody, right? They don't necessarily tell that person they're being investigated. You don't find out until you're trying to get a loan on a vehicle or something, and it's like, hey, we can't give you a loan right now. Why? Well, whatever, your credit's locked because you're the recipient of this investigation, or some of these you don't
Holy
even know this
cow.
process is going.
So you're saying the process is the punishment?
So it's not very clear, right, guys? So but so when I taught this class too, I just had to say at one point, I'm telling you how things functioned in 18 years of teaching this when there was rule of law, and now I'm telling you how this functions now. Because these directives come out, which I've never seen before, and it really is putting parents are being positioned in one letter. I don't know if it was from, oh, here it is. The National School Board Association wrote a letter on September 29th, and this is a letter they wrote to the President Biden, which fueled this October 4th. But the National School Board Association wrote a letter, and in that they were saying that some of the threats of violence that parents were doing was on par with domestic terrorists. So it's right in their memo. They use that. It's in a 97-word sentence, by the way, which I've never written a 97-word sentence in my life. But yeah, so it is using the word domestic terrorist and parents in the same vein. So as a safety guy, right? Like this is just unbelievable stuff I've never seen before. And as I tell parents, if you're going to present to a school board, which you have the right to, but always record yourself, have somebody there who's specifically just recording you, have your statements prepared and things like that in advance, because, that's at least your set of evidence versus like a set of evidence that might come up later. But yeah, I was thinking it the whole time, John, Stasi in my mind of this is becoming, who's going to get turned in by somebody else.
Yeah, it is. It's 1984 Stasi, whatever you want to use.
Yeah.
It's getting crazy out there. And we have like a ministry of truth going on too. If you think about it, if you never read 1984, the Ministry of Truth was called the Ministry of Truth, but it was the propaganda wing.
Right.
And if you look at some of it, I mean, that's what's going on, especially with like a lot of the mainstream media and stuff. They're putting out blatantly false things about people.
Yeah. No, that's definitely happening. Where for me, one of the very tangible things was a week ago Sunday in Waukesha, which is 2 hours away from me. And, somebody drives through and basically, massacres a crowd.
It was an SUV accident.
Right.
Damn them SUVs.
So Rich, and so what I did is I went on and I was contacting every reporter I could, both locally and nationally, who was saying it was a SUV accident, it was a crash, and saying, this is inaccurate, right? This was a massacre. People were killed. People didn't lose their lives. People were killed as a result of this. So this whole thing of and then also on my local news, 2 days later, Madison, Wisconsin, they had a feature on this. And what the feature was, it was about reuniting people with their folding chairs that were left at the scene. So they had this.
What?
This was like a 2-minute thing. So this was the way that they were going to cover this 48 hours out. So I also had that, I know how long it was. I had that recorded because people say, no, that didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, this is what they did. Is so that, they're showing this like gymnasium or something with all of these chairs, and people can come down and claim their chairs or their water bottles. And then they interview some guy who comes out of this place, and And they're like, so this is, and they're using the words like this is kind of healing, right? This is like, it's reunification. The guy's like, I suppose.
What?
Like what? So the whole thing was so off key, right? And instead of talking about, the victims in the hospital, learning more about the victims or support for the victims, or even things like saying, if you were there and you have video of this, here's how to submit your video to authority. That wasn't happening. So all of this very careful, measured coverage and selection of words to try to, again, make people see things in a certain way and then also forget about it. Again, we're a week out and it doesn't make the news any longer here, although I think there's 20 some people still in the hospital, including kids, critical condition. But yeah,
the narrative.
This was absolutely sickening to me.
And the thing that I hate about incidents like this is they say, 5 people are dead. Is it 5 or 6 at this point?
It's 6. Yeah.
It's 6. So they say 6 people are dead. But I want to know how many people have a broken arm or leg? How many people lost an arm or leg? How many people are never going to walk again? How many, there's a whole human side to this that just isn't a scorecard, living and dead.
Right. So Rich, I mean, I'm right with you on that. And where's the investigative journalism to go down that road? It just doesn't exist anymore. And so, yeah, that's extremely frustrating because I again, call it like it is. And so when I wrote School of Errors, I talked to several parents who, that had children who were killed by shooters. Okay. And they said, use the word killed, right? That they were killed by shooters instead of lost their lives. And that's something, we get into this Waukesha narrative. Killed has never been part of the narrative. It's tragedy, right? Or it's crash or something like that. So to me, it's sickening. When I saw that they were doing this piece and this whole thing of this, here are all these folding chairs. Yeah, people could care less, right? About they're not coming down to try to find their folding chair. I mean, this isn't going to be this, oh yeah, we left here and this chair meant a lot to us. I mean, come on, give me a break. And yet,
some people, I don't know that I'd want it back. If I ran out and I had a folding chair and I ran away, I don't know that I want it back.
Right. So I just, it was, I think it was, both irresponsible journalism, but it's also intentional because somebody had to approve that story. Some editor, someone in the newsroom, and go ahead and do this. And so that's the part too, is always thinking, this went through levels to get approved. This just wasn't some, rogue journalist who thought this was a unique angle. So it is very, it stands out when you look for it, the way that things are badged. I was going back to the headlines after 9/11 and, the headlines, terrorists crash planes into World Trade Center, massive loss of life. Like I took all the headlines down from like the New York Times and all these other, and they were like really headlines you wouldn't see today. It would be very measured and so that's something too, is we're not identifying these issues. And if we don't identify them because we're going to offend people or whatever, then we're not going to address these things either. Or companies, right? Like those lock companies, John, like the companies that are selling those locks that fail. Like if you're not identifying them, they're so it is this really weird dance in safety. But I think one of the things, like I said, going and just getting people to make decisions and figuring out what's happening around them, like this. You guys know about the Kim's game? So Kim's game started out with, I think it was like back in the Scouts around 1908 or something, and so you'd have like 30 things on a table in front of you, and then you look at it for 30 seconds, and then it's covered up, and 2 minutes later you have to say, okay, what was on the table and where was it, or how many things are made out of wood, what's made out of metal and stuff like that. So Kim's game was a good way to practice like situational awareness, what's happening around you. But, do we teach that to kids? Like nobody does that. Like I bring that up and I talked about in PBS, teaching kids to be aware of what's happening around them, it doesn't cost anything, right? So vendors aren't going to push it. We can make money off of bottlers. I can't make money off of just having you do Kim's Cube.
I gotcha.
Even these things. I was when I was supposed to keynote at a big conference, and all the paperwork was signed and all of that, and then within 24 hours, there's one side or the other can cancel, and the vendor or the conference person got a hold of me and said, we have to cancel. We can't have you here. So then basically there's a small severance and then it's done. And I said, okay, well, why not? And they're like, because the stuff you're talking about it's not going to support our vendors because they're trying to sell products and you're trying to sell systems, right? So we can't have you here because, right, the vendors are paying $20,000 for their 6-foot table out in front in one of their breakouts. So yeah, I get it. Thanks for being honest.
Wow.
But yeah, I could make a lot. I could make a lot of money if I went down the road.
If you drank the Kool-Aid or shared the Kool-Aid. And one thing I've managed teams of people before, and I've gone on vacation. And I looked at everybody on the team. I said, when I'm gone, make decisions. Right or wrong, I don't care. Make decisions. If I disagree when we come back, we'll talk about why, how we got there, and why, and that's it. And that's what I think is critical. Is people need to be self-actuated to make decisions. The worst thing you can do is sit there and stare at it. And I'm going to throw my daughter under the bus a little bit. She's 19, and so right now I'm sitting in my office and I got socks on, and there's carpet in my office, but the rest of the house is tile. I'm here like I am right now behind my desk. She's yelling fire. So I'm like, all right, I need to get into the kitchen as quickly as possible without ending up on my head.
Right.
And in the microwave, she had something it was like foil on one side, paper on the other.
Yes. Yep.
So it's like slightly better than a candle burning.
Right.
I looked at that and I'm like, I just grabbed, a dish towel and threw it over it. And John, I'm sure, is just as much a pyro as I was growing up. We burned all sorts of things. We knew how to put it out.
I used to be a firefighter, remember? Oh,
that too, yeah.
Right.
So you were pyro extreme then.
Most firefighters, they did something where they compared the psyche of firefighters with the psyche of arsonists. They were, which is crazy.
And it's shocking to me. So my daughter's an A student, but wouldn't know how. It's like, hey, at what point do I grab the dry chemical extinguisher? At what point do I, grab a cup of water, throw it on it? Oh, it's a grease fire. Don't do this.
She's also Gen Z, right?
Whatever. She's 19. Whatever that makes her.
Gen Z. There you go.
And while I'm throwing my daughter under the bus, I'm going to do one last chore. I have a fire pit. And she'd have friends over, so the fire pit, they'd roast marshmallows and stuff. I've always started every fire at the fire pit with flint and magnesium. My daughter one day, this is years ago, so I got to give her a break, says, Daddy, if the power's out from a hurricane, will the fire pit still work?
Well, there you go.
And I'm like,
that's almost as bad as my oregano story. My wife's Italian, so she asked me one time. She was like, "I'm looking for the spice." I was like, "What spice are you looking for?" She's like, "I can't say it in English. I don't know what the English word for it is. I think it's Oregon." I was like, "Oregon? What the hell?" And I'm like, "What's the Italian word for it?" She goes, "Oregano." I was like, "Oh, here you go. It's called oregano in English too." She gets so mad at me every time I tell this story, but funny. She's like, I don't know
I like that.
She was like, I don't know the English word for it. My wife doesn't speak English with an Italian accent. Even though Italian was her first language. She didn't learn English until she was 5, but she speaks perfect English, and she also speaks perfect Italian. So when we go back to Italy to visit her family and stuff, it really confuses the hell out of people there. Because she'll be talking Italian to them and they're like, oh yeah, the Italian girl. Are you a tour guide? She's like, no. And then she'll start talking to me in English, perfect English, and their face just like looks like, what the hell?
Wow.
It's really funny.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But yeah, she has no accent no matter what language she speaks. She also speaks like Spanish and a bunch of other languages, but whatever.
But it is a shame that, unfortunately, the only thing that's getting into the classrooms, whether it's educational or materials, is stuff that people can make a profit on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And something else. So actually, the 2019 PBS presentation, which is free, right? You just type in my name plus PBS, and it comes up. There's a lot of wisdom in that presentation. I mean, you put it hours. I mean, I put months into building that, but yeah, it is. Geocaching was another thing that I was talking about. Get kids out with their phones and GPS, and so they could understand their environment, and then also like, hey, like draw a map of like the places that you were around the school, around the house, and so free, right? That's something that, and it never took off. Like, why not? Why you could teach, directions that way. You could teach distance that way. All of these things you could bring into. You could write a story about. I mean, but it didn't catch on, and that's the thing. These safety ideas, which are effective, it seems, unless you can package them. If I sold this as a program, a geocaching program, then people probably buy it. Or like that. Kim's game. I could put 30 things here in a box and sell it for $100, and suddenly it's Kim's game. So, it seems if it doesn't come as something you can actually buy, then it's like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
But and I think so. I'm going to like kind of link to Dark's show. Dark talks about prepping a lot, and a lot of us are more consumers. So my wife and daughter, they want to eat organic food, but when I grow something in the backyard, that's the last thing they want to eat. They want to buy it from a store that says organic. And I think a lot of people, I think Dark, or I'm not sure who said it on his show, that less than 1% of the people grow their own food in the United States.
Right.
And we're just used to anything that comes into our house of value is something we got on a store. It wasn't built right here, where your butt's sitting.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem, which, links back to what I said earlier. The worst way to spend money is when other people spend money on other people, because nobody concerned about value or price in that case.
And nobody is really that good steward of money anymore. When I started in school administration 25 years ago, I mean, there was a tedious process of going and assembling a budget, right? I mean, if you could get in bulk, you could buy paper for printers and get a better deal on the lower. I mean, you did, and today, like, nobody even compares those type of things. They'll just like, there's a lot of money thrown out there into the system, and people just buy, or they just get told what to buy, through third parties, vendors and stuff coming in and say, here's what you need. And all that is lost. And, so Rich is a great point too, right? You go to a grocery store or something, and it's like, this is organic or this isn't organic. I mean, people will go for the organic, even though they know nothing about it, or that they have the ability to grow this in their backyard, or there's a farmer's market in their town and they could go get something at a farmer's market. It does seem like this whole thing of where people are so used to being externally validated. Like if they don't feel that it comes from somewhere, and that's where I think 3D printing is going to be liberating. And I think we're also in this process of moving from just-in-time manufacturing to 3D printing, and 3D printing is going to be empowering people at a very local or very proximal, like just, their home themselves, their creativity. So that's exciting. But it is this whole society. And I see again in school safety. And I really, stress this to students, and I'll stop them if they start to say, well, this is what whoever said, or this is, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, but what do you think? Like, you're the leader of this school, right? So like, what do you think? Do you think this would work, or what, 2 years ago, well, start of COVID. So when the kids returned to school in fall, we were talking about safety drills. So how do you do safety drills when students haven't been in school for a while, stuff like this? And one of the soups said, my principals complete their safety drills, and they did socially distanced fire drills. And I'm like, well, tell me about that. And he said, well, they would wait. So the alarm went off, and then they would wait and count like 1001, 1002, 1003, and then a student would go, and then they count, and another student there was social space. I said, okay,
jump.
Yeah. So right, this is something face validity, guys. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this is a good person, right? They're trying to do the right thing, but obviously, like, this is wrong. Like, you obviously, right, just get your principal. Don't share the story in class where everybody else can hear it. But so I was talking to him. I said, right, the thing is, though, like, that makes zero sense. You can't socially distance a fire drill. No. This is nuts. Like, you can't do this. You don't want 8 minutes for people to get out of a building. But yet it was this thing where no one said anything. They talked about it. The principals were all like, okay, this seems like it makes sense. And I'm like, a socially distanced fire drill.
So here's the proposition. What's more important? Getting out of a fire orderly and quickly, or pretending not to get COVID somehow?
Right.
Because you're telling me each kid is 6 feet apart, has a mask on, all that crap, and if the mask works, why do you need to be 6 feet apart? Whatever. Have somebody stand at the door, hand out some hand sanitizer, and put a mask on, and then go like 1 inch apart.
Right. I mean, so what you just said, right? That makes sense. So that totally is a logical way to do this. So the question is, like, why locally didn't someone say that, or why didn't a number of voices come together?
Because it wasn't in the manual.
Yeah, it wasn't in the manual, and I think people were so terrified on how. And then the other thing was instead of just doing these drills, they were saying we're not going to do them because we've got too many other things going on, and sometimes students are here and sometimes they're not, and if they're not here, then those students won't have received the instruction or whatever. So they decided not to do them. So, which is, I guess, even worse maybe, but it's strange because you see people fatigue their systems because
I hate to, I don't know if I'm throwing a further monkey wrench into the works, but show me when there's an actual fire how the fire drill helped anyone.
Yeah, that's a good question. I go back. I mean, it's always the Our Lady of Angels fire in Chicago in 1958, and where 92 students perished and 3 nuns. And the case there was they were looking for somebody who was in charge to pull the alarm. So the alarm sounded too late to get.
No, you're 1952.
This is 1958, December 1,
58.
1950. So that's a case where the alarm wasn't pulled in time. So right.
Wow.
So the thing is, like, right. I think the thing is, with these drills is, if when you're doing these drills, they have to be done with fidelity in the same way so people can anticipate them. Because now if you have the drill in that same school where they have the socially distanced drill, maybe kids are kind of just waiting. Okay, is the teacher going to send us out now? Or are we all huddled in the classroom? Because, like, if we all go out together, we could get in trouble because we're socially close while we're exiting the building. I mean, all these things now that people shouldn't have to think about, or like 7-year-olds shouldn't have to think about, but now it's kind of like, well, last time we did it, the teacher had us. So it's these things. I call it face validity, right? If it doesn't make sense, then it probably is. If you're feeling this doesn't make sense, it likely doesn't make sense. It's like a thermometer. You look at it and it's 88 degrees and you're outside and it's snowing and you're shaking. You're like, well, what the hell? This is 88 degrees. Well, actually, the thermometer is either broken or your senses are obscured. Something is wrong because you can't have both of these. And people just don't recognize that face validity check. And hey, like, this doesn't make any sense to do this. And one of my cohorts, safety stuff, they bought these cameras, like these 8K cameras, and it was all badged as, well, if there's a safety situation, the first responders can log into your system and see where everything is at. And I'm like, yeah, that might happen, although, like, I doubt it actually would. But they were basically saying, yeah, if, students are exchanging like notes or something, you could read what was on the note, like from 40 feet. I'm like, are you ever going to do that? Like, is that practical? Like, what are you being sold here? You're being sold expensive cameras, and you're being told like, yeah, people can, if there's something going on in your school, responders will be able to log in. I'm like, they're not doing that. Like, they're responding, and they're not going to have an iPad in one hand of trying to see, whatever. And I said, it's all crazy.
It's all garbage.
So when I work with, so schools are required to do school safety drills, and in my state, and then January 1st, they have to submit to the state. So I teach, the students kind of how to do these reports. So it's always, police, fire, EMS. And so we talk about, what do you want to accomplish with this? And usually there's no objective, right? Like, I used to participate in these. I have a picture of I'm running into the building, in SWAT gear and stuff like that. And I said, well, let's make a list. You want to know what your communications were? Did people know to grab their radios? Did they know what channel? Did emergency responders know where to stage their assets? What did they learn? How close could they get to the school? Or was there like a field or something where they, could stage their assets? Were students afraid of the responders, especially the younger kids? You have a firefighter, right, John, coming in turnout gear. That can be intimidating, or even like EMS comes because a student has a seizure or something. So, were kids familiar? Were they familiar with, having a tour of the ambulance and stuff like that? So you get did the messages go out to parents? Like, we get messages every day, like, hey, your kid was in close contact with another with a COVID thing. And so if they're having symptoms, please keep them home and test them. So did your messaging go out? Did parents know that this was happening? How about other buildings like 4K sites or, community preschools and stuff like that, who are part of your school, where they notified something's going on in the building? So when you actually do that and say, here's like 5 things we're going to measure, yeah, it makes sense. But otherwise it just comes in, it becomes this high drama. And it's usually where they turn all of these into intruder exercises, right? Instead of, as we've talked about, radon, epoxy, weather, things like that are more prevalent, but they turn it in, and then they get hyper realistic of, bring in drama teams to paint people up in blood and have them in hallways and put them in body bags outside schools, which I saw. And I'm like, and then the news they take pictures, and then that they feel like this is the way it should look. And I'm like, no, this is it's way over the top. It's not, this isn't realism. This is just, it's a very dramatic display that you're doing to get a reaction out of people and to make it look like you're, I think, doing what you need to do for the drill. It's just really weird. Schools have where people can participate and say, hey, like, I'm a community member. Can I participate in this drill? Sure. Like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the intruder? Do you want to be a victim? Do you want to be this person outside trying to get into the building? So now police have to figure out how to keep a perimeter. I'm like, that's kind of crazy, right? Like, and we don't do it for fire drills, tornado drills, earthquake and stuff like that. I think when I presented in 2019, there had been like 13 students killed in tornadoes or storms in the last like 10 years. So like that, that happens, but we never see people like do drills where they would put a barn fan and a handful of rocks into it and say, here's what it feels like if, this 100-mile-an-hour wind comes down your hallway with debris. So, but I think one of my biggest accomplishments, and it continues to expand, is to remove or to make people think beyond guns and make people think beyond just this intruder mindset when it comes to safety. Because that's just the narrative, right? I mean, if you talk about school safety, it becomes active shooter or gun violence. Like, that's exactly where people vein into. They go right down on that exit, right? That's where they're going. And
so
then you're not...
Bacon has a comment here. John, do we have to stop?
Yeah, we do. We are almost up.
Yeah.
Get to
I think we need to have you back again. And okay. I've got a list of stuff I wanted to hit with you. But this was an excellent show. We definitely got to have you back.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely. You've been a great guest. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the people out there have learned a lot. Rich, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you?
FlyingRich.com, YouTube.com/FlyingRich, and on the grams, FlyingRich_official.
Watch this, Safety Doc. What's your channel? You want
to channel that I want to pimp?
Yeah.
I thought I had it listed here.
He never.
Serious, man? I went through this. I got a list somewhere. Oh, well, I can't find it. I can't find it. Oh, wait. Did I say anything that fires last week?
No.
All right. Anything that fires.
All right. Safety Doc, tell everyone where they can find you at. And everyone needs to sub to him. Let's get him to 1,000 people.
Hey, thanks, John. And thanks, Rich. So safetyphd.com is my website. And my channel is the Safety Doc on YouTube. So if you type that in, and yeah, I do shows on Monday nights and then Friday mornings. And yeah, at Safety PhD, you can also find links out to my presentations on PBS. So if you're a parent, and I mean, both are an hour long. They're terrific, right? And they're free. So, and guys, one last time here, it's Christmas time. School of Errors, the most honest book about the $3 billion school safety industry. Places that sell books. So, and I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. I've really looked forward to this all day. So appreciate it, guys.
No, I mean,
we definitely got to have you back.
Yeah, definitely have to have you back. I loved it. All right, guys, you know where to find me at. You can also check me out at John Crump News on YouTube. And just go to crumpy.com and you can find me anywhere. I had a new article that dropped by a guy named Wes, who's a very, very patriotic guy who's also a freaking insanely great programmer. So go, and I'm gonna have him on the show on Wednesday. But I wrote an article about one of the programs that he wrote exclusively for our youth, and that's over at ammoland.com. And it's already got calls from like people on the Hill that like want him to expand it and stuff like that. I gotta talk to him about that. I told him they better pay him, so I'll see what they come back with. All right, I'm going to give the Safety Doc the final word. Share a word of wisdom with everyone out there.
Yeah, a word of wisdom is just to be observant of what's happening around you and talk about it. It's face validity. And also, I wrote about, it's called a member check network. 3-4 people let you know and say, hey, what are you observing in your environment for prices in stores or supplies or price of gas or how people are behaving. And that really makes a big difference in helping to calibrate you, because as the media is all over the place, the media has an agenda, but your friends and your family are going to be very true. Use the words I observe instead of they said. I observe is much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Bacon, link to your PBS interview on there. And with that, Wolverine.
That's how John closes.
John just went Wolverine.